Team building in Wuthering Waves is a topic that doesn't come up often. As a skill-based action combat game, the focus of the developers and players alike tends to be focused elsewhere. However, for a more casual player with little skill to speak of, such as myself, it is something much more accessible and much more important. Team building, or putting a team together, is a process by which we are able to achieve our own fun independent of skill, by exploring different possibilities in search of something more befitting of the way we'd like to play, even if that something isn't optimal or even practical. It is creative expression, and similarly to skill expression, it serves as a way for players to individualize themselves within the game world. But instead of setting yourself apart by testing what you're capable of, it's more about expressing who you are. In that sense, it's similar to the player's profile and unit showcase, the purpose of which is explicitly for you to do that. However, team building is taking that concept and applying it in a more practical sense, expressing yourself through the way in which you play the game. What's your most used unit? How do you use them? Who do you use them with? All of these questions are part of a very simple yet easy to overlook concept: player identity. A concept that's so simple to implement and foster that I had taken it for granted until Wuthering Waves came around. Kuro is a company with incredible proficiency in action combat. Nobody can take that away from them. But when it comes to other, perhaps smaller aspects, they are not great at them. Player identity is only one of them, but one I feel they really fumbled from the beginning, and they somehow managed to make it worse over time. While I understand that it's not the game's main focus, it is still something I genuinely believe matters for the long term. Even if the game's balance is not at risk, at least for now, many systems are already victims to the game's direction, choking all the life out of them, creating points of needless friction that can only ever make the game worse. And people have already begun getting tired of it, only 1 year into the live service. But just for the record, this is something I myself was quite wary of since release, but I held out hope that future updates will rectify it. Instead, Kuro has doubled and even tripled down on it, and if appropriate feedback on the matter isn't given to them, it's likely to get much worse before it gets any better. So I think it's time to have a genuine conversation about the player's identity within the game. It is, however, a very lengthy discussion, so for this video I'd like to focus on how the game's systems and character design actively work against you. Systems are the backbone of the game. They serve as a simple baseline to build upon. A perfect example of a good system for identity is the elemental system from Genshin Impact, where the whole idea is that every element is different and the way they interact with each other is as well. It's incredibly simple yet extremely effective as a baseline, because of how many possibilities it creates for the game to use in character, enemy, and overworld design, as well as how easy it is to expand upon those possibilities by just adding more reactions. With such an overwhelming amount of possibilities, it's easy to design characters who interact and take advantage of the system in different ways, giving each of those characters a unique identity, which the player can then take and play with in different ways to find a team that's appealing to them specifically. In short, the name of the game is variety. The more possibilities you create for the players to explore, the better. In contrast to the elemental system, WoWA has Concerto, a system where you build up a meter, then cast a character's outro and activate another's intro. In that sense, it is less similar to Genshin's reaction system and closer to Honkai Impact's QTE system, a system where characters can activate switching attacks by meeting certain criteria, which is much simpler than Genshin's elements, but still invites you to experiment by having the criteria be possible to meet in a wide variety of ways. Comparatively, Concerto is incredibly straightforward. The only thing worth noting about it at a baseline is that intro skills deal a ton of vibration damage. It's such a simple system that it really doesn't affect much by itself. It doesn't create much in the way of opportunities, but it also doesn't hinder them, making it, in itself, harmless. However, things change when we factor in what characters do with the system. Intros for the most part are unremarkable. Most of them don't do anything, but the cool characters get special benefits from casting them, and that is great. The problem really begins to show when we talk about outros, which are not so great. A couple of them are just attacks that deal no damage. No harm there. A select few are fully unique, but even fewer are actually interesting. The rest of the cast gets a damage amplification as their outro effect, which still doesn't sound so bad until you realize what amps are. They're conditional true damage increases that start at 15% and go as high as 100%. It's like if you took the elemental system, made every character their own unique element, made those elements only react with specific other elements, but then the only reaction is vaporized with different multipliers. While this has made the game drastically easier to balance, since there's so few variables to account for, and that may very well have been the goal Kuro had with the system, That same lack of variables is the reason why there's no room for creativity. Amplifications only work if you can even deal the type of damage they're increasing. They're the same as regular damage buffs in that sense, except they're much stronger. So much stronger that calling them in any way optional would be a stretch. Pair that with some of the most aggressive min-matic I've seen in any game, and you get DPS that are stuck to whatever character can provide an amplification they can even use, and supports that are stuck to whatever DPS can even make use of their amp, since any team in which their amp isn't useful, somebody else's would be. This binary design philosophy, where a character will either provide an absolutely disgusting amount of value or none at all, is the antithesis of creating opportunities. It is creating friction and giving you plenty of reasons not to try things. It's all or nothing, it either works or it doesn't. There's no reason to think because the solution was written in the question. It is a system that does not even slightly invite you to experiment. It simply tells you what to do, and you can either do that or deal less damage. That's it. The elemental and QTE systems were great at the start, before being butchered by MiHoYo's handling over the years, but the control system came out in an already questionable state and Kuro decided to just keep dragging it through the mud. Amps with 2 conditions. Main DPS with amps. Amps plus damage. Higher amps. It may be a sound system from a balancing standpoint, but from a gameplay standpoint, I at least find it to be extremely lame. And that sucks to say whenever it affects every new release now. The last character to release without an amp outro was Aero Rover in 2.2, and he still has an amp in his signature sword. The last time he got an outro with an actually interesting effect was arguably Pebble, which just deals damage but actually deals damage. She can also amplify, by the way. The last time we got a character with a unique outro and no amp at all was actually all the way back in 1.0 with Yang Yang and Spectral Rover. That is depressing to think about. However, even with a rough start in its systems, the game still had plenty of room to improve through its characters. As we've gone over, the use of the control system in said characters is not great, at least on the outro side, but that's only one part of every character's kit. Now, the topic of character design is incredibly nuanced, and if I actually got into it, we'd be here all day. I would not because I tried. To generalize in a shape, way, or form is a huge disservice to all of the good, the bad, and the ugly in it. But thankfully, the newest version release has gifted us with 2 characters who perfectly represent my broader issues with the roster. Augusta, representing main DPS characters, and Ayuno, representing sub DPS / support characters. Augusta is a character who I almost call a step in the right direction. She's a fun character that does not depend on some random gimmick that locks her into a specific team or partner. Her outro, while still an amp, is not a conditional amp, nor is it insanely high. It's just a neat little buff that lets her bump up the damage of her sub DPS or act as one herself, which is a great addition to her flexibility instead of a detriment to it. The amp comes with an effect that makes it so when that character outros, Augusta gets a bonus, even if not switched into directly. If that were the end of it, I honestly might have even been willing to praise Kuro for such a simple yet effective design. But of course, there just had to be a little something thrown in there. Augusta's outro, just like most amps, is lost on Switch. Being penalized for doing one of the most fun things in the game sucks enough as it is, but it's nothing unique to her. What is unique is the extra effect her outro has, which goes away along with the amp. So if you switch for any reason before you can outro, Augusta herself loses damage, on top of already losing the amp. And I just gotta ask, why? Why would you ever make her work like this? If you use Augusta as a hyper carry, which most people will, you have no option but to outro to your healer, since if you outro onto your sub DPS, they're stuck on field until they can outro, at which point they must go back to Augusta, who is then stuck because the amp she just got will go away if she switches. So if you want to get your healer's buffs up, you have to use your amp on them, even though they won't be able to use it. To make matters worse, you're screwed regardless of which healer you use. If you use Shorekeeper, you're stuck unable to switch, which is awful because Shorekeeper plays way better with switching. And if you use Barina, you instantly grip her rotation because she doesn't want to use her intro skill ever. And all of those issues could have been avoided if you just let her outro stay on switch. And that is my big issue with DPS in this game. There's always something dumb thrown in there to kill their flexibility on top of the control system already doing that. Some exceptions apply. Notoriously, Carlotta is a very flexible DPS, and all it takes to do that is use not having some dumbass gimmick stopping you from doing so. It is that easy, but for some reason Kuro insists on shoving pointless gimmick down our throats. And those gimmicks, more often than not, serve the only purpose of limiting the character's options and do not improve their gameplay in any way. Plainly speaking, it sucks. It's an awful design direction and it's the way the game's been heading for the better part of its life now. And then there's Ayuno, the sub-DPS she's meant to be played with. Off the bat, it's easy to point out that these two are meant to work in a team of two. Both of them have outros that lock them on field, but Ayuno is a healer, so she removes the need for a third slot altogether, and with it the only problem with Augusta's kit. It works perfectly in this comp, and only in this comp. However, in order to run only 2 units, you're leaving behind your beloved Chorina buffs, which are by far too great to let go of. So, with Augusta already doing her part to lock herself into this comp, it is now time for Ayuno's part of the deal. Not only does she provide a 50% heavy attack amp, which is the highest amp that's not a straight up gimmick, she additionally provides an additional 4% amplification for every shield generated by the active character, up to 40%. This is insanely overpowered and unreasonably conditional already, but it still gets worse. Ayuno herself can generate shields to get the full 10 stacks since she's meant to deal damage to take advantage of Augusta's outro. However, unlike almost every other shield in the game, it cannot be transferred on switch, and neither can the accompanying amp. So the only way to get the full value out of it is by generating 10 shields by yourself within 4 seconds without switching. Something that is impossible to the large majority of the cast, except her and Augusta. So yet again, we have absolutely ridiculous amounts of value locked behind unreasonable conditions that make it entirely unusable by most of the cast. Just why? Why would you design a character like this? Is this supposed to make me want to pull her? Because I'll be honest, I was going to already just based on her design alone, but after seeing the absolute atrocity that is her kit, I don't want to. The 50% heavy amp was gross enough, but 40% amp only for Augusta is absolutely diabolical. And that is the perfect encapsulation of the problem with some DPS in this game. They're almost all made for one specific DPS. When paired with that 1 or maybe 2 units, they are incredible. But when paired with anybody else, they kinda just suck ass. And all it takes for that to not happen is to make the value they bring to the table not be binary in nature. I'm not saying every character should be able to get the 40% amp easily, but you could have made her at least give out 4 shields on switch so it's not entirely useless, or otherwise made it so it's only her shields that can be passed down and extended the duration of the stacks, so characters like Tao Chi and Yan Chen can slowly stack them for the team. There are so many ways you can achieve flexibility while still shielding a specific unit, but Kuro is not even mildly interested in exploring them, and it's just so lame. I can understand that balancing is a serious concern, but when you take it to this extreme, when you as a developer start optimizing the fun out of the game before it even gets into the player's hands, it's not gonna make it unplayable, not even close, but it just makes the entire experience so much lesser. When I looked at my Genshin Impact account, I saw endless possibilities in my roster. I didn't try them all, not even close, but I knew they were there, and most importantly, other people did try them. And I saw that and it was awesome. Wherever I looked, wherever I asked, everybody played the game differently. Out of my entire friend group, not a single one of us ran the same team or even close. And it's really hard to convey in words how cool that is. For everybody to be playing the same game and yet everybody's experience is so different in a good way. Even Honkai Impact managed to do it despite having one less slot and a worse system. Literally the only thing stopping Wu from doing the same is Kuro. If amps didn't exist, if DPS characters didn't rely so hard on gimmicks, if some DPS were more about their damage contribution and less about their amp, if Arena and Shorekeeper weren't so dumb. I didn't even go over them properly, but yeah, fuck these two and their over-centralization of the meta. That led to Kuro having to make even dumber but far more units in an effort to push them out of teams. If this game just eased up on the restrictions and just let you take your unit you paid $300 for and use it on more than like 2 teams if you're lucky, I genuinely believe it could be far better than it is today. Because I believe the skill expression the game prides itself on actually benefits from creative expression. Because sure, a quick clear is impressive, but a quick clear with an unconventional team is both impressive and refreshing. I believe that people are more willing to pull for units if they know they don't come with strings attached, that they'll be able to use them right out of the box regardless of what's in their account, Or even better, that within their account there's many options for their new shiny toy to be used with. Even better, that as the game progresses, more and more options will present themselves. I firmly believe that identity, freedom, or at the very least a lack of restrictions is incredibly important for a game's long-term success. Especially now with games like DNA and Assure Promilia on the horizon. Games with seemingly less built-in restrictions, one of which has greater expression in the form of customization, and another one which has what seems to be another elemental system. I'm not about to be that guy that says the game is going to be OS. It won't. But as competition rises, if said competition is more appealing to casuals, and all you've got to your name is a high skill ceiling that most players can't reach, again, not on iOS, that's dramatic, but they're certainly going to take a hit. And I think investing into player identity is, at bare minimum, a simple and cost-effective way to minimize that hit. Because when players can look at their team and go, this here is my team, it may suck ass and never clear tower, but I made it. That sense of belonging can be an incredibly powerful incentive to keep playing. I would know, I still have Genshin installed against my better judgment. UWA already has amazing units with very fun kits. All they have to do is ease up on the restrictions and the players will do the rest. For now, the game's direction is locked for the foreseeable future. Without getting into details, the next two units neither help nor worsen anything. They just fit right into the current state of the game. And I'm not holding much hope for Shisa and Bulin. But with 3.0 coming after that, if there's ever a time to change direction, you're not gonna find a better opportunity than a major update. And if Kuro is fully unwilling to change direction, well, like I said, competition is coming. So if I find it more appealing, I'll certainly be jumping ship. Especially if the story keeps getting worse every fucking patch, but that's a discussion for another day. Until then, take it away.